So happy you chose to be here. We are actually wrapping up a four-part series today called Parenting on Purpose. And over the last few weeks, if you haven't been here, we've just been talking about what it looks like to raise our kids with intentionality based on God's instructions, what He says for us parents. Because the reality is, parenting can be awesome. It can be some of the greatest joys we'll ever experience and so many heartwarming moments with our kids, and also at the same time be something that exposes all of our weaknesses. And if you've been a parent for more than 5 days, it can cause some of the deepest heartaches we'll ever feel as well. And so how do we do this parenting thing better? What does God say? We only have limited time and energy. Where should we focus our efforts so that we can do our best, give our kids the best shot going forward? And so the first week of this series, we talked about the idea of dependence and how every single one of us desperately need God to be involved in the process. We need, like, for ourselves, we need to experience His grace and His patience and His wisdom. Why? So that we're not parenting from a place of needing something from our kids, but we're so full and satisfied that we can parent from a place of giving to our kids out of an abundance of what God has already done in us and for us. The second week, we talked about the idea of direction, that what, our kids are being taught and shaped by something all the time. Now, sometimes that's culture, or maybe it's friends, it's for sure the screens that they've got in front of their faces. And if we as parents don't intentionally teach and train, if we're not working to become the loudest voice, you know what? The world is going to step in and gladly take that place for us. Last week, we talked about discipline. It's the part that no one enjoys, but it's definitely something that every kid needs. And you know what? If we truly love our kids according to God, then we need to correct them and guide them back towards what's right, even when it's hard, even when it's uncomfortable, even when there might be some tears in our eyes and theirs. And there's a whole lot of other detail that we covered each and every week. If you miss any of the previous 3 weeks, you can always check them out online or wherever you listen to podcasts. But today we're going to wrap up this series by talking about this: diligence. What does it look like to parent on purpose, to stay faithful, to just keep showing up, to not give up when parenting will inevitably feel slow and challenging, and we run into some roadblocks, and maybe even sometimes when parenting can feel discouraging. See, the reality is parenting is not a sprint, it is a lifelong marathon. From the moment we become a parent to the moment we die, it's just a part of our lives. And it can be very hard. It can be just a relentless thing that keeps happening. And the longer you're a parent, I think the more we begin to realize, this doesn't really get easier. I mean, there are parts that might get easier, but you know what? It's just that things change. The early years when our kids are really little, infants and toddlers, they can be so draining physically. I think the middle years, I've got two teenage girls, those can be draining emotionally. For parents with older kids, maybe they're adults, even depending on the choices our adult kids make, that can be even draining spiritually. Whether it's testing our patience or testing our priorities or even testing our faith, every single stage just stretches us in a new way. And I think somewhere between the ball games and maybe arguments that we have with our kids and late night talks, and they're going to slam doors and, all those different things, I wonder if we don't all just end up a little tired, just a little exhausted from it all. I think of what the great philosopher Mike Tyson once said: everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. I wonder if that's not a great definition of parenting. Everybody has a plan for parenting till you get punched in the face. I mean, we all start, I would hope anyway, with good intentions. Oh, you know what? We're going to have family dinners and it's going to be great. And we're going to say bedtime prayers and it's going to be awesome. And you know what? I'm going to make sure and have these intentional conversations. And oh my gosh, here's a list of 80 bajillion things my parents did wrong. And we're going to go the complete opposite way. But I think what happens to all of us is over time, life just begins to crowd in. Things get busy, emotions get heavy, that spark of, oh my gosh, look at this baby, it's inevitably starts to fade. And I think without realizing it, many of us move from being purposeful parents to just kind of being passive ones. I would guess even in this series, if you've been here the whole time, most of us have probably thought, okay, you know what? Yes, I am going to depend on God. I'm going to seek Him and build my relationship. Yes, I'm going to direct my kids. Yes, I'm going to implement discipline until we get punched in the face with how hard it is. We obviously we love our kids deeply. That doesn't change. But I think for most of us, if we're honest, there are so many times where we're just running on fumes. And I think that's when the temptation can start to creep in. When we're tired or when we're discouraged, isn't it so much easier to just coast than engage? Isn't it easier after a long day and lots of, tantrums being thrown? It's so easier just to kind of coexist than to be intentional about leading and guiding our kids. It's way easier. I know I've been there before, way easier to hand over the phone or the tablet than to have another hard conversation and try to train and mold and shape hearts. And I'm not saying that to make anybody feel, but I think we've all been there. Every parent who's been doing this for a while knows, hey, you're going to hit moments of exhaustion and frustration. We've probably all asked ourselves, man, I've said that 1,000 times. Is 1,001 really going to make a difference? I've tried everything I can do. What else is there? And I wonder, am I pushing too hard? Do I need to back those internal questions and struggles and moments where we're just wondering? Having those doesn't mean that we're a failure. It actually just means that we're human. The job of being a parent is just hard, and there's really no sense in trying to sugarcoat it. And I think what makes this especially difficult is that we rarely tend to see any immediate results. And when we don't see immediate results, then we start thinking to ourselves, well, what I'm doing, does it really matter? Maybe we start to buy into the idea that, hey, I missed my chance. Oh, shoot, I've blown up too many times. It's not going to work. Now I'm getting a late start and behind the eight ball. This whole parenting, I might as well just give up. But listen, it's when we think and feel those things, that's when this matters the most. Diligence is not about you and I having to be perfect. Thank God, because we won't make it. But it is about us staying faithful. There's a book on my shelf in my office, has something completely to do other than parenting, but I love the title. The title is A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. And I think that's what this is. I think that's part of our role as parents, is just a long obedience to what God says in the same direction. But we don't live in a culture that trains us how to do that. We don't operate in this long, slow, stick it out type of world. Everything around us is built for speed and comfort and ease. We don't measure whether something is working in decades. Oh my gosh, we only have seconds to see. Our Netflix and DoorDash kind of world have trained us to seek out instant gratification. But come on, we all know inside parenting doesn't work that way. It's not about, quick wins or instant results. It is about endurance. It's about showing up again and again and again, being there again tomorrow, saying the same things tomorrow, even when we might have screwed up today, even when today didn't go how we had hoped. And here's the thing, God knows about this struggle that we have, and He addresses it head on. Hey, what do we do when the results don't show up? What do we do when we feel like the work just drags on and on? Well, in Galatians, through Paul's words, we read this. So let's not get tired of doing what's good. At just the right time, I don't know when that is. I wish I could pinpoint it. But at just the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up. I think that's really the key. Don't give up. This verse was not written for irresponsible people. It wasn't written for people just trying to kick back and be lazy. No, this was written for people who had a temptation to just be tired. Paul was warning these believers. Now they were dealing with something completely different, but encouraging them, hey, don't lose heart in what God has called you to do. Is it hard? Don't give up. You feel defeated? Don't give up. It doesn't seem like it's working? Don't give up. And man, I think this is a reminder that every single one of us who are parents need to hear, because we're going to get tired of doing the right things. We're going to get tired of repeating ourselves. We're going to get tired of trying again and again and again. If we think that it's just going to be this happy go lucky, rosy experience and we're never going to get worn out, we're the ones mistaken. Of course, it's hard. Raising kids is one of the most challenging things you and I could ever do. Trying to teach kids to be honest is hard. Trying to enforce responsibility is hard. Trying to get a kid who's 5 years old to see beyond the next 30 seconds might make us lose our minds, you know? But the encouragement is the same no matter what. Don't get tired of doing what's good. Why? Because God is always working. Because God is always drawing. Listen, God can use our efforts, no matter how small or how insignificant we might think they are. He can use those to produce something great. There's a creator I watch on social media every now and again, and he ends almost every video with the same phrase. Maybe you've seen him. Says, "It isn't easy, but it is simple. Don't overcomplicate it." It isn't easy, but it is simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Most of his stuff is about health and fitness, and I don't know why his videos show up on my For You page, but we tend to think, right? Hey, you know what? If we cut out fast food and we go to the gym 3 times, then by the end of the week, we'll be down 30 pounds. And like, obviously, we know that's not how this works. That's, I think, the same kind of idea that God is trying to remind us of through Paul's words. Hey, just keep showing up. Just keep doing the right things. This is what we need to remember as parents. But again, I think what makes this so hard is we all want to see the results and we want to see them right away. But our responsibility, whether or not we succeed at our parenting job, I think it's more about our own obedience than it is about the outcome of our kids. In First Corinthians, Paul writes this kind of explanation of it. He says, "After all, who is Apollos? Who is Paul? Hey, we are only God's servants through whom you believed the good news. Each of us did the work the Lord gave us. I planted the seed in your hearts, and Apollos watered it, but here is the key. It is God who made it grow." They each had their thing. God had called each of them to do a certain part, but it was God who made things grow. And as parents, listen, we definitely have a job to do. It's not like we get to just sit back and relax and say, "God, it's all on you." No, we have to plant and water and weed and feed. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we can't control the outcome of where our kids end up. We can guide, we can lead, we can influence, we can discipline, we can pray. We need to do all of those things. But the end result is beyond us. I think, many of us aren't farmers, but I think this imagery is so good. Farmer can plant the seed, he can water it faithfully, he can do all of his stuff. But the farmer can't force a harvest, right? A farmer can't make it rain. A farmer can't tell the sun to shine. A farmer can't make a little plant sprout out of the ground. All he can do is stay faithful to what he's supposed to do and trust that the seed will grow. So I think that's what God is reminding us of here. When it comes to parenting, we are responsible to instruct and to model and to do all of the things, but we can't make our kids' heart change. We need to do our very best to create healthy environments, but we can't make the lessons take root. And that's not a failure on our part. It's just reality. And I think this is one of the things that, hey, it's God who makes it grow. That's one of the things that is both humbling about parenting, but also extremely freeing at the same time. Yeah, it's humbling because you know what? We can't control everything. As much as we might want to, we can't fix every issue. We can't protect from every mistake. But yet, hopefully, we see that it's so free because it means the end results are not entirely on us. That we can see and acknowledge and lean into the fact that God is in the mix, even when we can't see Him working. That He's still moving, even when it feels like we failed. That, you know what? God is still speaking, even when it seems like our kids have stopped listening. He's still growing things under the surface that we might not see for years. We can't do everything for our kids, but we can do our thing. And then I know this is hard and it sounds cliche, but then we hand it over and trust God with the results. I don't know if you've heard the old cliche before, plan like it all depends on you, but pray like it all depends on God. Hey, listen, we need to parent and raise our kids with all of the intentionality and resolve and just keep chugging away at it like it all depends on us. But we also need to remember that ultimately, God is in charge of the results. He's the only one with the ability to make something grow in the hearts of our children. At the very end of this letter, Paul just writes this great reminder that, you know what, I try to think about and remember in so many areas of life. But he says, and so, my dear brothers and sisters, be strong and immovable. Always work enthusiastically for the Lord at whatever you're doing, for you know that nothing you do for the Lord is ever useless. And especially when it comes to parenting, I think this is something that we ought to try and memorize and plant as deep into our hearts as possible. To not allow our frustration that we're all going to feel from time to time to convince us that our direction doesn't matter. To not allow the fatigue to keep us from giving the discipline that we need to, but to just keep working at it, even as imperfectly as we can. Knowing that, hey, we are doing the work of the Lord every time we lead and teach and correct and model. We're doing that in His name in response to what He's called us to do as parents. Yeah, but what if I mess something up? Nothing is useless. Hey, what if my kids are teens already and I feel like I'm starting too late? Okay, but nothing is useless. I want to do the right things when I keep failing. I don't have the courage to do it or whatever. Good thing we have a God who is bigger than our failures and that He promises us that nothing we do in response to Him is ever useless. His word is clear. It's not in vain. I love what another pastor says. His name's Andy Stanley, and he says this: your greatest contribution to the kingdom of God might not be something you do, but someone that you raise. I would guess that most of us, we probably want to do some great things for God. But you know what? I think it starts at home with the lives that we've been entrusted to shape and raise and mold. And you know what? The encouragement today is let's stay faithful to that. Let's stay diligent to that calling. Now, what does that look like in real life? You know, obviously it's easy to sit and hear something on a Tuesday night, and it's something completely different Wednesday morning when the kids are already throwing a fit, right? What does it look like to be diligent in real life? Well, I think for those of us with little ones, diligence probably just looks like consistency. It's not going to be something flashy or big or some change. It's just day in, day out rhythm of showing up. It's all the early mornings, all the way through to the late nights. It's probably for some of us in that stage of never-ending diapers and spilled milk and tantrums and timeouts. And you know what? Diligence at those young single year stages is just repeating yourselves for 1,000 times over and over and over again. Probably wondering all along, my gosh, is this ever going to work? I know it's exhausting, but these young years, this is when foundations are poured. Every calm correction, every bedtime prayer, every time we choose to be patient instead of just blowing up in anger, That's an opportunity for something to be planted in their hearts. And you know what? We may not see it for years, but those little seeds, that's where things like maturity and wisdom and responsibility, that's where those roots can start to take hold. I know it's going to feel monotonous. Don't give up. Don't give in. Those long repetitive days, I think, are often doing more than we realize. If you got teenagers, diligence looks like consistency, yeah, but it's also that's also courage. It's also connection, you know? When our kids are teenagers, our influence is gonna feel like it's so small. Probably feel like our words won't carry the same weight. And you know what? Their world is gonna be moving so fast and like, man, what happened? What changed? Where's the kid I used to know? And I think those are the years where it's easy to start to question, hey, is this even working? You know, did they hear me? Did it matter? Are they going to remember? Listen, this is a time to stay engaged, to not give up, to not stop going. We can't mistake. Yeah, they're becoming more independent as teenagers, or at least I hope they're becoming more independent. But just because that doesn't mean they're indifferent all the time. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they just roll their eyes and that's the end of it. But not always. You know what? Hey, they might roll their eyes sometimes, but they're probably still watching some other times. Yeah, they might push back against our rules, but you know what? When life starts to feel unstable, those rules might be the security net that they fall back onto. We need to not give up in those years and try our best to keep the lines of communication as open as possible. To keep loving and pouring into them even when they don't reciprocate anything back. Keep showing up even when it feels one-sided. Diligence in those teenage years is not about control, but I think really about just staying connected, trying to influence any way that we can, choosing to keep building the relationship even when it seems like maybe we're the only ones working at it. And for those of us with adult kids, I think diligence can really be extremely challenging because you know what? The rules have changed a little bit. We're no longer the authority figure for our adult kids. We can't do things the same way. Maybe sometimes for some of us, our adult kids don't even want us in their lives. What do we do there? Maybe they're making some really poor choices. Maybe you see something that's happening and they're about to go into financial hardship or a relational struggle, and you want so badly to step in and say something, but there's no opportunity. Maybe for some of us, our adult kids have walked away from God completely. I think diligence here is as simple, but also as powerful as prayer. It's just waiting and loving and still trusting God. I think diligence for adult kids might look like, hey, spending hours a week just on our knees praying that God would move somehow, that he would reach them by any means possible. Diligence with adult children might mean just, God, I'm going to believe that somehow, some way you're still working, that you want my kids, that you love my kids more than I can even imagine. It looks different across ages and stages, but the heart behind it is always the same. Let's not refuse to quit when it would be so much easier to coast. Let's do what God has called us to do so that he has more of an opportunity to do what only he can do. I mean, here's the deal. Let's just not give up. Don't give up on the small things that no one sees. Don't give up on the conversations that feel one-sided. Don't give up on praying when it seems like nothing is changing. We ought to just stay faithful to what God has called us to do. And you know what? If we ever need an example of what this looks like, what does it mean to keep pursuing and staying faithful to my kids? You know what? We have the greatest example to look at ever with our own Heavenly Father. That he hasn't quit on us when we've wandered. That he hasn't thrown his hands up when we've resisted. He's never once rolled his eyes at any of us when we were slow to learn something. He's been patient and steady and calling us back to himself all along. And so as parents, let's take our cues for how to parent from the best example there is.